I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. In today's episode, I will be joined by a new friend of mine, Amy Allen Clark, from the momadvice.com blog and host of the Book Gang podcast, to talk about all things books and friendship. From why friendship is such an underrated relationship to how to reconnect with old friends and how to make new ones. Plus, Amy will share 5 book recommendations that have the theme of friendship weaved throughout the pages. But before I get into my episode with Amy, I just want to remind you that this is one of the collaboration episodes I was talking about back in January. Because this year I will be collaborating with Amy, but also Cindy from the Thoughts from a Page podcast. So this month, you will hear me sharing recommendations on Cindy's show, the Thoughts from a Page podcast, and Cindy will be sharing over on Amy's show, the Book Gang podcast. So pretty please check everyone out because we're all talking about different and exciting topics. And of course, we're sharing great book recommendations. So what else can be better? So again, subscribe to my show, the Reader's Couch podcast, if you haven't already. But also, please support Amy over at the Book Gang podcast and Cindy at the Thoughts from a Page podcast. Alrighty, friends, thanks in advance. And now onto the episode with Amy Allen Clark. Hi, friends. Welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood. And today on the couch to talk all things books and friendship with me is Amy Allen Clark from momadvice.com and the Book Gang podcast. Hi, Amy. Welcome to the couch.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this. I love talking about friendship and I love talking about it with you.
Yay! I mean, we are building a friendship ourselves, and I personally feel, and you know, this is something we were talking about before hitting record, is I feel that friendship is such an underrated type of relationship. I feel like folks focus more on finding, you know, your romantic partner and that kind of relationship, but not so much on friendship, especially as adults. Like, why do you think that is?
You know, I feel like I had a really unique position with friendship because we had moved to a new town. When we first moved here, I knew that the very first thing I wanted to get in place structure-wise was a friendship group. And I was online looking for people, and they had these great moms groups when I was a young mom, and I joined a group, and those women became like my forever friends. They are still my friends that on occasion, I will say, as we get older, our friendships do change, and that is perfectly normal. And I feel like when I'm with them now, it is more special because we know that we are all putting things aside when we need to for our friendships. But those relationships sustained me. Like, I miss those days so much when my kids were young. We used to get together like 3 times a week. It's kind of crazy when I talk about it now, but we would get together, have a cup of coffee. We would spend the whole day together until it was lunchtime for naps and then head home. And we had mom's night outs and all of these things. And if I would not have had that, I do not think I would have survived those younger years with my kids. I was not, it's hard to talk about, but I think it's important to talk about. I didn't feel like a natural, like, this is my thing kind of with motherhood, and it's okay if it isn't. And that was something that I grew to appreciate and love. And I feel like now that my kids are older, this is like my sweet spot as a mom. And those friendships are basically what helped me get through a season that I didn't really feel very sure about myself. I'm so grateful for the women in my life.
I echo your sentiments. And it's so funny that you just shared about not feeling like maybe momming was your thing, because it wasn't natural for me either. And like you, when your kids are really young, that bond is just, it's unexplainable. I think part of it is because we're both in the trenches at that time. And, we both need those breaks. And as the children get older and become their own individuals and doing different activities. So then now you're following the beat of their drums and you might not get together as often. And like you, when I moved, so in my case, when I moved to the States, the most important thing for me was finding that friend group. I had no family nearby. Obviously, I didn't know anyone. It was my first time being in this town even. And I actually made friends first by just going to a local gym. And those women led me to a local women's group where we do volunteer work and fundraising. And that was great. So that expanded my circle. But especially with those first 3 women I met at the gym, we used to have brunch every month. And now it's like more every 3 months. And that's okay. But when we do get together, it feels like our last brunch was last week. I have a girlfriend I met fresh out of college. We've been friends for over 20 years. And even though we don't talk every week or every day like we used to, when we get each other on the phone or when we see each other, it feels like, again, it was just yesterday. But I also want to, basically echo and say friendships change over time or needs change over time. We're in different places and that's okay. But I think we should make an effort to kind of reach out and find new friends who have interest that we have currently. How easy or how hard is it for you to make new friends at this new stage in your life?
So I am 46 for the record, and my children are 21 and 18. So we are in a very different kind of stage with parenting. And what I ended up doing was joining a local junior league where I could bond with some women in our town. A lot of them are in the business mindset, like they are working full-time jobs. These are not, a lot of the women are not stay-at-home moms. So they have careers and they also are trying to cultivate community bonds and get to know each other through that. And so that has been a wonderful avenue for finding a different set of friends at this stage in my life. But I also want to say that for me, I'm not necessarily, and I say this hesitantly, but I'm not necessarily seeking new friends because I have so many of my old friends that I love bonding with that I tend to neglect those friendships. And if I get too many like circumstantial friends or friends that are just like fly by the seat of your pants kind of friends that you just get together, once in a while, but there's not real bonds between you and them, I don't really want to use my energy in that way. And I think that speaks to the age group that I'm in. I want to cultivate the friendships that are established. So I found that apps like Marco Polo. I don't know if any of our listeners use this app, but it's basically like a one-way walkie-talkie, and you can send videos of yourself to your friends and get videos back when it's, convenient for them. And so I find that that's a really good way to stay in touch with my friends and cultivate those friendships.
Oh, I love hearing that. I don't know that app. I've just been using WhatsApp. So we send voice notes to each other. We'll send pictures, again, a short video, depending on what's going on. Like my girlfriend, she loves everything Jane Austen. And I had a Jane Austen tea party. And I sent her pictures from the setup because I know she would appreciate that. And she responded to me 2 weeks later, which is fine, by the way. So that's just a way for us to touch base. So I just kind of want to nudge listeners and say, hey, you might see a message days later, weeks later, it's fine. It's just about having that avenue where you can touch base. I also love that you mentioned fostering the relationships that we already have. I love the suggestion of Marco Polo. In my case, I use WhatsApp. But what other tips that have worked for you personally when it comes to someone who maybe hasn't spoken to this friend in years, but they miss the friendship and they want to touch base with them? How would you approach that?
So I have ran into this scenario, so I can speak to that. A lot of times what ends up happening is because I live in a small town, I might run into someone that I've lost touch with. And I think what I would say to that is that the pandemic changed things for a lot of people. And it, in some ways, is the perfect excuse to say, I've fallen off the face of the earth and I want to say sorry. I think about you often, but I would love to get back together with you. I have had 2 coffee dates with people that I lost touch with over the pandemic, and everyone was down their own tunnel. I blame no one. Everyone is dealing with their own stuff. And I have to tell you that those coffee dates, they were exactly what I needed. One of my girlfriends and I just met at a Panera Bread. It was I just want somewhere where I can get a cup of coffee that's, affordable and just enjoy a day with my friend. And we sat there from the breakfast time until the lunch hour came around. We were cackling like old witches. We hadn't seen each other in years. So we're just talking and talking. And it was honestly so good for my soul, because if you have the right kind of friends that you invest in, usually when you decide to initiate that, you're going to pick right back up. And I don't think anyone is salty about how people approach that season in life. So use that as kind of the excuse, I guess, to get back into connecting with people. Everyone understands, everyone wants that back, and we all are just doing our best, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all doing our best. The pandemic, great excuse. But even before then, I found myself just being caught in this whirlwind of just my own life and my own things happening with my family, that you do have blinders on and you do forget about those friendships. But I agree with you, just, putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I went down my own tunnel. I do miss you. I'm thinking about you. And just take that first step. So I love that. On the flip side, I also know that some people might have left friendship in the back, because there are some friends that unfortunately are not healthy for individuals. Each situation and circumstances are different and unique. I've had friends that we had the best of times, great memories. I don't regret anything, but their relationship was not healthy for me moving forward in my life and with my family and where I want to be. So for those people who need new friends, I know, again, just how hard it is to meet new people. What recommendations or ideas do you have for someone who's interested in reaching out to, whether it's a new group, an organization, or maybe just seeing someone online, because we've connected over books online. There's so many people who've connected with readers online. How do you recommend them making and taking that first step?
Well, I mean, truly, and it's not just because I'm in this space. I do think book clubs are a wonderful thing for connection. And if you are listening, you are likely a reader. You should check in with your local library and just see if maybe there's an opportunity to connect. A lot of times they host author chats or they have books that they're discussing. Check with your indie bookshops, see if there's a way that you could connect there, or join an online group if there is something that really fits with you. It doesn't even necessarily need to fit with you. Even if you come in and you're like, these are not books that I would typically pick up, but you are getting the chance to talk about a new book with someone, a lot of those online connections can facilitate into real life connections. And I think that's the beauty in having bookish communities, is I do find them to be a very warm space. I have never joined a book club where people were mean. I truly haven't. And I'm not saying that because I do book clubs or am part of a book club. It is because those people are typically empathetic and caring and compassionate and curious about the world. And so I think personally, that is a really great place to start. And if you're, a small business owner or something like that, you could also check in with your local, city. What do you have available to me as resources, maybe social hours and things like that. But for me, I am desiring just real, genuine connections. Those places can be starts to good friendships, and then you can kind of branch out, and it's okay to put yourself out there and just, it's a little like online dating or, doing a dating app, right? You are, looking for friends, and it starts with sometimes blind dates, and sometimes that doesn't work out, and sometimes you're a perfect match, and it's nothing about you personally that is not working. It's just that, friendships, they change. And I wish that more people talked about, sometimes you outgrow your friendships and sometimes it's nothing to do with you. It's just that you have evolved as a person. But those friendships, when you remove them from your life, it can feel a little like a divorce. And it's good to think about, how can I fill in this gap so that I'm not fixating on this loss? I never realized how much that would fracture me when I lost a friend. And it is a divorce kind of process. And so a really good way to kind of intervene with that is to think about what new people fit with where I'm at now in my life.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I endorse book clubs and book communities. And Amy and we both have book communities as well. So if you guys, want to kind of dip your toes in, we invite you to join us because it's just a great place. I love meeting new people as well. And I think book people are the best people after all. So yes, we invite you to join us. And on the note of books, because we've been talking about friendship and there are some great books out there on friendship that have those relationships in the pages. And Amy has some great recommendations for us. So what's the first book on your list?
So the first book that I have to bring to the show is The Sunshine Girls by Molly Fader. This is a under the radar gem. It's a historical fiction book. I would call this light and frothy. It's the kind of historical fiction that you could easily read with a book club. It's the kind that you could pack in a beach bag. It's not a heavy historical fiction read. For background, Molly Fader used to, or I should say not used to, but she is a writer of Harlequin romances. So she has a little bit of that lens, but this is a contemporary fiction kind of selection. So basically it's about three best friends and they are serving as nurses during the Vietnam War. They are going through school and training. And what ends up happening is a very strange interception, but basically one of them gets a job on a Hollywood set and it lures in another one of the nurses. So a couple of them are working on this very fun Hollywood set and it's set, during that era. So you get to learn a lot about Hollywood sets and design and what they're doing on there. And one of them is in charge of a man who is doing a lot of stunts. And just for the record, back in those days, they didn't have a lot of standards. So you push your body to the limits and you are never supposed to do anything. So she's really tasked with a heavy nurse duty. But this whole life has been a big secret. She ends up becoming a mom and she has some, children. And basically when she passes away, her daughters are really embroiled in a big dispute about the estate and they're not getting along very well. And on the day of their funeral for their mother, this random Hollywood star shows up at the funeral, which is can you even imagine having a funeral and a Hollywood star? I'm thinking Jessica Lange or someone, just really Hollywood. And she shows up and is hey, you don't know anything about your mother. I have a whole bunch of dishy secrets to tell you. And so it's them discovering that their mother was intertwined with this guy. And it's so fun. And it is also a beautiful story about friendship. There was a lot about nursing during that era that I didn't know about. And Molly Fader's mom was a nurse. So a lot of this story was inspired by both her friendships and her career in nursing.
I love a good historical fiction, but heavy on the friendship. So I'm really excited. What's book 2 on your list?
So the second book that I want to bring is not light, but it is a short read. So if you were I want a short, impactful read on friendship, my recommendation would be Last Summer on State Street by Toya Wolf. This came out a couple summers ago. It is a coming of age story. Jacqueline Woodson is a pretty good comparable comp for what this book is like. It's poetic, a little lyrical. Basically, we are, navigating a friendship story told through the eyes of Felicia, who's known as Fifi. She's a young girl that's living in Chicago Robert Taylor homes during the summer of 1998. So she's got these other friends that are also there. And basically what I loved about this story is that every single day they are playing jump rope. And jump rope it's more than just a mechanism for moving story, but it's kind of, showing how they're intertwined, how they do this thing together, and all around them, there's destruction happening in the neighborhood. Like everything is starting to, come down around them, but they are continuing to play jump rope, which is, kind of signifying, it's very symbolic of what this friendship is sustaining. There's a lot of backstories happening with these girls. It is very heavy, but because it's a short read, it's really impactful in a way that you're like, I just want a little impactful story about friendship. I think this is such a good example of this. And part of this was written from Toya Wolf's own experience of living in this neighborhood and what she was witness to. And I just thought that this was such a great debut. It's unexpected from a debut novelist. I feel like she wrote like a really seasoned writer. Is this one that you've read?
Yes, I absolutely love this one. You guys, you probably can't see me, but I've been smiling and shaking my head and being like, yes, Toya Wolf. Again, I was blown away too that this was a debut. This one came out 2022. I actually recommended that one in my summer reading guide. It was just so good. It's, you get that coming of age story element. You see these two girls, their friendship alongside their family, of course. It is, to your point, a little heavy, but it's a short read. So you will get that quick hit. But yes, I'm really excited to see what Toya writes next. It was just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And if people are looking for audiobooks, this one was really good on audiobook. It was beautiful. I remember I was like filling my tub trying to get ready for the day. And I just was like standing there listening because the audiobook narration was so fantastic. And there is a little bit of suspense with what is going to happen around them and what's happening with these girls. So it's the kind of audiobook that you can engage with. And also, if you have a short attention span, this is a good pick for you because it's not a very long story. You can really sink your teeth into it quickly.
Ooh, I love hearing that. It reads good on page. I can tell you that for sure. And here comes Amy endorsing the audiobook. So yay, that's amazing. Okay, what is book 3 on your list?
Okay, book 3 is a book that I did not think I would like. So I'm just going to be honest about that. So if you are at first like, oh, I don't think this would be for me, I want you to know that it might be. It's The 100 Years of Lenny and Margot. It's been written by Mary Ann Cronin. This is an unlikely friendship story that blossoms between a 17-year-old girl named Lenny and an 83-year-old woman named Margot. So in our book club, we typically offer a reader's choice selection. We offer 3 of them. And these are like the most voted upon within the group, what book they want to read. So this was their pick. So I am always like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I would have picked that, but I will read it because they are so kind to read all my assigned reading. So I ended up like sobbing. I loved this book so much. I want to speak to the age difference, which is kind of an unusual age gap, right, between these two women. They are basically at the Glasgow Princess Royal Hospital, and they are both patients there. And they decide to do a arts and crafts project together. And the idea is that basically their two ages add up to 100 years. So they are trying to tell the story of their lives through 100 art pieces. And the reader gets to understand more as they are going through these different paintings and they're explaining what these paintings are about. So both of the stories have really great like storylines. Lenny is very funny. She's like comical. She's inquisitive. She doesn't really understand faith and isn't really like embracing faith. And there's a chaplain that's at the hospital that she develops friendship with. And there is some really sweet, engaging, witty banter between the two of them about God and faith. But the other character has a really compelling backstory. And it is the kind of story that it kind of reminds me of a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, for example, where you start to uncover lots of layers to this character. And as you get to know her more and more, you feel just what she sacrificed, what she's given up. And of course, they're at the hospital. So there is, those kinds of things that they are navigating with their illnesses and what's happening with them physically in that moment as well. I just thought it was such a beautiful story, and I recommend it for people that like intergenerational friendships, and it's not too saccharine. I know you might think this doesn't sound like the book for me. It is for you. I promise. I've never met a reader that didn't love it.
I know this one was so good. Now, on the contrary, I felt like this book was for me because I love those intergenerational friendships, because I do have fond memories of saying that one of my best friends was an 80-year-old woman at the time, and I was like
Oh.
15, but I thought she was the coolest. And she'd invite me over, and, we'd have tea and we'd talk and we'd paint, because she was very much into art. My grandmother, she taught me how to do crochet. So then I'm doing bits as well. And she taught me the embroidering. It was fun. I think I loved visiting with her because of just the stories. And I realized at a really young age, I love story, which is why I probably read as much as I do. So when I saw this age gap friendship, I was like, yes, I want to read this story. And I loved it. I really did. It was just so sweet. And I haven't met a reader who didn't like that one either.
Yeah. She doesn't do a lot of like author interviews, and there's like a church, I think it was, that hosted her on YouTube. And it was fascinating to learn more about that story because there isn't a lot of information about her writing process or anything. And so that's what I encourage readers to go and watch, because it's a really wonderful interview. So I will share the link with you for your show notes, because I thought it was so magnificent to learn more about the story behind it. But I'm always into intergenerational storylines. But I think if I'm worried that it's going to get saccharine, then I'm like, I don't know if this one might be for me. So I just thought this was perfectly like well done. It was just great.
Yay, I love it. That's amazing. And I will be watching the YouTube video too. But what's book 4 on your list?
So I'm going to go with a little bit of a wild card. I'm going to pick a thriller for this one. It's You Can Trust Me by Wendy Hurd. This is a con artist story, and I feel like at least the last 3 years, con artists have been having a bit of a moment in our fiction. And this one I really loved because Wendy Hurd really wrote the cons so well. And it is about two friends who are basically in it together, I guess. They pickpocket, they do whatever they can to survive. They both have some compelling backstories and reasons why they are in this kind of survival mode, which the reader can uncover. But basically, they decide we're going to go after this particular guy. One of them finds that he's like really into her. It turns out he's a billionaire. I mean, what more could you ask for if you are in the middle of a con? And he invites her to this private island where, she thinks, oh, this is it. Like, this is the big fish. We've been trying so hard to get someone. If we can land this guy, we will be set. And basically she goes to the island and disappears. And her friend can't hear from her. She starts to worry something's wrong. And this is about a friendship story about what would you do if that happened to your friend, right? Would you go to the ends of the earth with them? Especially when I feel like in some ways this friendship is circumstantial. Like, it isn't necessarily that they were like drawn to each other because the friendship started first. They're really in a situation where it starts from this place, but then they start to realize how important they are to each other. So it's an unusual story for sure for a friendship theme, but I thought that the bonds between these women was really believable, and it is very suspenseful. It read a little bit like a film. I had never read Wendy Hurd's writing before, but she writes YA stories, a lot of queer YA stories if you are looking for LGBTQ stacks. But I thought that this one was so good, and it was really interesting to talk to her about her process, because writing a con is really, I think it takes a skill set. It wasn't something that I had thought about until we had that conversation. Like, how do you capture that? How do you capture that on a page? And she does it really well. She writes very cinematically, and her writing process is very interesting to me.
Yay, I enjoyed this one too. And it's so funny. I love that you gave us that curveball and went thriller, because you do find some great friendships in thrillers as well. And I agree, Wendy Hurd does an amazing job at writing these women's relationships. I love the con element, by the way. And just seeing how far one friend would go for another, to find her and all that good stuff. So yes, I enjoyed it too. I had a chat with Wendy Hurd as well. It's on the podcast. I'll include a link in the show notes as well. But yes, who would have thought a thriller?
Yes.
It works. It works. Okay. What's book 5 on your list?
The fifth book is one that I hope a lot of people have read, but if you haven't read it, I just have to put in a plug for The People We Keep by Alison Larkin. This is like one of my favorite books that we've read together as a book club, but I also want to say that Allie Larkin is an amazing person just in general. Sometimes when you do shows like this, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, Victoria, where you find a deeper connection with someone that you have on as a guest, where it's not transactional. It is like someone who is fully showing up for you past an episode that they do. Like, it's not just like, please promote my book. It's like, I have an established friendship with this person and I really, really like her. So I just want to say Alison Larkin is good people. And this story is exceptional. Basically, we have a girl who is in a really bad situation at her home. Her dad is just terrible. And she lives in this dilapidated motor home, but she always has loved music and just very spontaneously, like, gets to the point where she can't live in the situation anymore, decides to run away basically from home and start a new life. And it takes her on quite a journey. She is a musician. She is very gifted, but, you also have to be like scrappy if you are a musician, figure out where you can like play and do these gigs and try to hopefully make money. And so she travels to the East Coast over 3 years and she forms all these beautiful connections. But one of the friendship stories that really stood out to me is when she was waiting tables for a while, she ends up forming this really lovely connection with a woman at the restaurant where they are working together. And I thought that this was so well developed. And I think that when you talk about your friendships with people where, there's a huge age gap, but you find that you really appreciate each other and the stories. I loved this friendship in the story. I think what makes this story sometimes tricky is that she doesn't feel like she deserves love. And it's very frustrating when you are reading someone who genuinely deserves all of the affection and the love that is in her life and what comes her way. And it is a journey experience because she has to find out, I am worthy of this person loving me. And all of these people in my life could potentially be the family that will fill in for the dad who is not great, right? And those kinds of friendships in this story really stood out to me. That friendship between the two women, but just in general, that she has to go through this journey. And sometimes she leaves abruptly or she refuses, things that she should be accepting. And it is about her finally acknowledging all of these people. I deserve them. And you deserve them. Like, if you have people in your life that, are offering things to you, like want to be there for you, like, you deserve that. But I think with this character in particular, it stands out to me that that's the journey that you have to be on in this friendship story.
Yes, absolutely. And I love when you meet authors and they turn out to be just good people, great friends. You can just have a conversation, you have that deeper connection, because after all, that's what we're talking about, friendship. So that's really exciting, that you have that relationship there. But also, listeners, I will include this in the show notes. But Amy shared 5 books with you today, but she has a whole list with 17 books. So if these 5 weren't enough for you, you can head on over there. You can see all the books, obviously, but you can get 12 more book recommendations. Again, I'll include a link in the show notes. But Amy, before I let you go, tell the people where they can find you, how they can support you, what's new, what's going on. Just plug everything.
Yeah, so you can find me on the Book Gang podcast where we celebrate debuts, under the radar books, and backlist gems. And we also have a Patreon if you would like to join. That's where you can connect with me for a book club. If you're looking for friends, it's a wonderful, wonderful community. And I'm not just saying that because I run it. I really think those people are amazing. And I also run momadvice.com, which has books, crafts, DIY, and a lot of movies and films, things like that for your family beyond what your book stack is. So you can connect with me there. I'm Mom Advice pretty much everywhere. So if you search for that, you'll likely find me.
Yes, you'll find her on social and all the places. Thank you, Amy, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for being my friend this year. I truly mean that. I am so grateful that we have this time together. And it's such a joy, like when you find connection, especially through books, and you're in real time getting to hear us get to know each other, which is kind of a unique experience, I think, for listeners and for us. So I'm really grateful.
Yes, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for Cindy. And like I said, when we did our intro episode, you'll be hearing more from us on each other's feed. So again, Cindy's from Thoughts from a Page, Amy Book Gang Podcast, and momadvice.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.